Hi, in this episode we will be dealing with the electric wires. The electric wires are to be hidden in the walls, so I have to mill some slots in the panels. I'll zoom you in for more detail here. A wood mill. The depth of the slot is just about deep enough for the wires because I don't want to cut through the panel. Here I'm checking the depth of the slots. The wires should move freely, of course, but it seemed to be okay. Wires can move freely. I'm happy. Same at the third floor. Yes, this is good. Now the second floor. Yeah, that's nice. Because I will glue the panels together and the wire will be sandwiched between the panels, so they have to be slotted in. And the first floor, of course, is also good. The last slot is a bit out of range of the camera, but it turned out to be good as well. Now the slots are milled, I can put in the electric wires. I use red and blue, but the color is not important. I'm preparing them, drilled some holes, and the wires will be led through the inside of the walls, so you won't see them. Of course I have a plan, but while I'm going, I'm figuring out things and I may change some details. But at this moment it's all functioning quite nicely. Cutting the wires to length and threading them. Of course, it will be a 12-volt system, but I will be running it at 9 volts. When you use bulbs that are rated 12 volt and you run them at 9 volt, they will give a bit more warm light and they will live longer. Now doing the first floor, or what we call in French the rez-de-chaussée, or in Holland we call it the begane grond. It's not a straight slot because it has to go over the door. This is the back facade at the inside we're dealing with here. And it's all coming along nicely. I have to leave some length because it has to go into the wall. That is the inner wall, and it has to come out at the outer wall and then be connected to this power supply. The wires of the first floor have to be glued in place because it will not stick in there, and I will have problems gluing the panels together. So that's why I glue them in the slot. Now it's time to prepare and fix the wall outlets. I have chosen for a 1 in 12 scale triple wall outlets. They come with an adhesive, a double-sided adhesive, and you glue them very easily to the wall. And yes, you can see my yellow fingers. I prepared a meal with curcuma or turmeric. I'm going to solder the wires together, and I'm preparing for soldering now. Because I don't want any problems with the wires inside of the walls, I use 6% phosphoric acid soldering flux. Because I want reliable connections. I use a very simple heat regulated soldering iron. The soldering wire is standard zinc, lead, copper alloy. Then I cut the wires to the desired length. Here I'm cutting the heat shrink tubing to length, and the heat shrink will be used to isolate, of course, the connections, and it's very reliable and will last very long. I will solder the wires together and then pull over the heat shrink tubing for good isolation. I'm trying to keep my hand out of the view of the camera, but it interferes with my soldering skills. Well, it doesn't appear to be possible for me to get my hand out of the way. Sorry for that. Next time I will put the camera in another angle. Soldering is gone well, so now it's time to pull over the shrink tubing for isolation. The shrink tubing is now in place, and I will heat it up to shrink it. This will form a very reliable and durable isolation for the wires. So I'm preparing another wall outlet. Here I'm dealing with the third floor, but all the floors will be dealt with in the same way. Here I'm preparing the triple outlet of the third floor, inserting the small wire, and of course gluing with double-sided tape the outlet to the wall. There are triple outlets, so on every outlet you can connect 3 lamps. And every floor will be equipped with a triple outlet. Here I'm installing an outlet on the 2nd floor. And now I will be soldering all the connections of all the floors. I've arrived on the 2nd and 1st floor, and then we're done, of course. Also applying some flux for better and optimal soldering. You can clearly see the milled slots that I milled in the back of the panel for relief of the connections. All the connections are soldered and isolated now. Before closing the 2 panels and gluing them, I will see to it that the connections are be kept in place, and I do that with a little hobby glue, just to keep them in place, nothing else. As long as the glue is drying, I will keep it in place with some tape. So there you are, 4 floors and 4 triple outlets, ready to be tested. I dimmed the lights a bit for the testing of the bulbs, and I'm hooking up the wires for the power supply. I will test it with 9 volts and also test it with 12 volts just to check it all. Here we have some 1:12 scale lamps. Getting the lamp out of the blister was a bit of a hassle, I must say. But well, there we go. We have light. The bulb is rated at 12 volt, but at this moment I run it on 8 or 9 volts or so. I test all the 3 of every outlet. It's a bit out of range here, but it works also on the 1st floor. Beautiful lamps, Tiffany. Try some other voltages. This is lower. Now going to 12 volt. And it's functioning fine. I'm happy. Okay, success. Thank you for watching. Now it's time to put the lamps in the ceiling. So there is the ceiling. You see the 5 holes where the lamps go through. And I'm going to prepare the wires now. Unfortunately, it's hard to see, but I just put a little bulb with the wiring through the hole. So I have 3 little bulbs at the ceiling side, and they all have two wires sticking through the little holes. The wooden bracings are glued to the backside of the ceiling. The wooden bracing you see is to keep the ceiling and the floor straight. The distance between the ceiling and the floor is about 5 millimeters or 0.20 inches. It is a hollow room, much like an acoustic guitar at the inside. It is a very light and a very strong construction. I'm preparing the wires here of a very nice ceiling lamp, which is very much in a Tiffany style. I like that. So there's the shrink tubing. First the electrical connections will be made and the lamp will be glued with double-sided tape to the ceiling at the white side, the underside of this panel. First of all, I will get rid of the isolation at the end of the wires, and I prepare the shrink tube. The next step will be tinning or soldering the ends of the wires, but first of all I will apply some flux. I use phosphoric acid 6%. Now I'm soldering the ends of the wires. I use a very simple temperature controlled soldering iron. It's nothing special. Here I'm pre-soldering the very tiny wires of the bulb. You can hardly see them. So thank you for watching. I hope to see you back in part 7. Bye.